The next talk will be by Holger, Reproducible Builds for Bullseye, Bookworm and Beyond.
Hello, nice to meet you. Today I'm talking about the last mile and other light years ahead. And it's not a talk of my work, it's a talk of the work of many, many people. Some are in the room, some are not contributing anymore, some still are. Yes. And the list is also cut down at the bottom. It ends at S, so there's more. So I'm Holger. I'm a Debian user since a bit more than 25 years. Located in Hamburg. I'm working on reproducible builds since 2014. I uploaded 10% of all source packages in Bullseye. And I will have uploaded a bit less than 10% of all packages in Bookworm. Because I've uploaded over 3,000 packages, and 500 have seen maintainer uploads so far. That's really cool, but the others have not seen uploads in 10 years, so I expect I'll keep them for some time. And May 2022 was quite extraordinary for me, so I had little time to prepare this talk, so it's not as good as I wish, but I think it's okay. Oh, and thanks to the people who made the month good for me, even though they'll probably never see this talk. Reproducible builds. So, who of you doesn't know what reproducible builds are? So we have at least two trolls in the audience and one. So the problem basically is source code of free software is available. That's not a problem. That's great. But people install precompiled binaries. And no one really knows whether they really correspond. Somebody says they do, some others don't. We don't know. As a result of that, there's various classes of supply chain attacks where you can modify the binaries or get different binaries than the source is intended. And the solution is enable anyone to independently verify that a given source produces bit-by-bit identical results. That's our definition of reproducible builds. And thus, the reproducible builds are an important building block in making supply chains more secure, but nothing more and nothing less. If the source code is shit, the source code is shit. And if there's other problems in the supply chain, it's still not secure. But as a side effect, with free software, you can know, with reproducible builds, you can be sure that a binary is free software, because that's the only way to really know that a binary comes from a given source code, instead of believing. So someone else's binary is certainly only free software if it's reproducible. But that's a nice side effect only. So when is a build reproducible? Given the same source code, build environment, and build instructions, any party can recreate bit-by-bit identical copies of all specified artifacts. That's our definition. And then it's also that there's sometimes builds produce more than the artifacts, logs, or whatever stuff. And the desired primary output, that's what we care about. The log files can be different, but the binaries should be the same. So, and we've written all this down on reproduciblebuilds.org/docs definition. So if you want to look it up, it's always there. And besides this, I will mostly ignore why and how to do such builds today, because we've given several talks explaining this, explaining common issues like timestamps and locales, and today is not much about this. And this has also been widely understood. Even the White House has issued or made a statement about supply chain attacks, and they invest billions of dollars now, and some go in the software ecosystem. Today I will just give an overview about various projects shortly, and then about Debian. So Tails is reproducible. It's pretty easy. They only build one ISO, and either it's reproducible or not. But they don't test it systematically. They have the instructions, and they rebuild it each time, but there's no CI or anything. Arch Linux has rebuilders, does rebuild against what they release, but they also lack user tools and further integration. And Arch is probably as reproducible as Debian, plus minus per few percent. I will also show updated Debian numbers in a second. SUSE has active development by just one person, and it's not enabled in the official repos. So he knows how to make them, Bernhard Wiedemann, but SUSE is also still not doing it. But it's the only RPM distro which is doing it. NixOS has this R13Y reproducibility.com, and there they show that whatever they don't have packages, they have parsers, and NixOS is a bit different. Similar with Geeks, also designed reproducible by design. They have a tool called Geeks Challenge where you can rebuild the stuff on your machine and compare it to others. Yocto has support for reproducible images, but Yocto by design is a source code project, so there's no binaries normally. And F-Droid has reproducible builds, but there's no UI, so you can crawl a web page and see if there's no log, then it's reproducible, and if there's a log, it's not reproducible. And they also don't make promises. And one of the applications in F-Droid which is reproducible is the contact tracing, Corona contact tracing Germany. But then there was a new upstream version, and that was not reproducible anymore, so they could not update to the new version. So that's also a problem you get when you demand reproducible builds, then sometimes you don't get newer versions or security fixes. Alpine has basic support by now. The BSD have basic support. Their base images are reproducible. And Fedora, Red Hat, Ubuntu, nobody is interested, it seems. I hope this still changes, whatever. So many projects support reproducible build, but it's usually unclear what it means, how it's enforced, and how users can know and be confident. We're still in this experimenting phase and showing that technically it's doable. Other interesting areas is this project from KPC, YRD. I probably didn't backdoor this. It's basically a fine manual. It's a simple hello world in Rust. Then he's reproducing an ELF binary, a Docker image, and an Arch Linux package. And he's describing how other people should be confident that he didn't put backdoors in the binary. It's a nice thing to read. I'd like a patch to do this, reproducing a Debian package as well for this manual. And Bernhard Wiedemann made the unreproducible package, where he collected many things, many common problems. So if you have problems, it's good to look at this, because there's also the fixes in there. And it's way easier to show how a package gets unreproducible than to prove the opposite. So Debian. In 2013, we had a BOF at DebConf 13, hosted by Lunar. I did not attend this BOF. I think I was busy video or whatever. DebConf 14 had another BOF. Then after that, I set up automated test builds at the end of 2014, which didn't have all the fancy stuff they have now with Diffoscope integrated. But they were first showing that I think Debian, we could reproduce 60% of the Debian package, or 54 or something. With a patch, the package was not officially supporting this. In FOSDEM 2015, Lunar and me gave a talk to get the wider FLOSS community involved, which kind of worked, or which worked, because we had the first Reproducible Build Summit at the end of 2015 in Athens, where we were like 30 or 35 people from 15 projects or something. And Diffoscope was written in 2014 or 15. And Diffoscope was really great. And then by DebConf 15, we had 4 people giving the talk. As you can clearly see, this is Lunar. This is Dole, who he was a Google Summer of Code student. There is Lambi, and this is myself. And we had a talk. And we made a BOF where we wondered how we could get Stretch reproducible. If you remember Stretch, this release from 2017. And then we gave some more talks. And I feel I've given warning that the next Debian release will not be reproducible for years. Is actually a quote from last year or the year before, so this is not really new, and I still feel fine. So why am I frustrated and happy at the same time? Maybe it's a bit me, but it's also the situation. The frustration first. Stretch, the reproducible in theory but not in practice release, because the depackaged patch, we didn't rebuild all the packages back then. That we could be reproducible, but we are not released. Buster didn't have built info files distribution. And Bullseye, we're almost there, but we still haven't sorted out some things. Yeah, and then that's better phrased. We almost made it in Bullseye. And maybe Bookworm will have some meaningful reproducibility, whatever that means. Or I will explain that in a bit. What is meaningful? So, and the previous two slides were actually also taken from last year, unmodified. So meaningful, usable reproducibility is what I now added. And then we have Trixie coming up. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So what's the issues? 93 reproducibility is a lie, or rather CI results. We have no Debian infrastructure rebuilding Debian packages. The reproducible rebuilders are builders, not rebuilders. We just build the source package twice and compare it with each other, but we don't care about the results on FTP Debian org, which everybody else is shipping. But this new URL with a different font is doing rebuilds against FTP Debian org. So we do have results now compared against what Debian release. And this is stalled because until last year we had two main blockers for rebuilders. One where there were 3,000 packages without build info files, so there was no way to rebuild all of it anyhow. And this I fixed last year by doing all these 3,000 uploads. And the other issue is that snapshot Debian.org was and still is unusable for rebuilds. You can get single packages out, but if you want to get 200 packages out, you will only get 170 or sometimes only 30. And if 10 people do it, will also not work. So this has been fixed by Frederick. And Josh. I'll get to that in a second. And also this 93% is from 2 years ago. We are actually at 96% for Bullseye, which is great. That's 2% up compared to Buster, which had 93.9. Or it's 3,000 more reproducible packages, which sounds way more impressive than 2%. Or we solved 1/3 of the remaining unreproducibility in Buster. That's even way better. 30% progress. Statistics, fun. But actually we are developing Bookworm, and Bookworm looks worse than Bullseye. Because Bookworm has way more packages than Bullseye. So we have more reproducible packages again than we had in Bullseye. So progress. And it's also neither a lie nor useless, because this, you cannot read this. This is bugs. The green one are the fixed one with the user tag reproducibility. And the number here is 20,000 bugs. And the vast majority of these bugs are fails to build from source bugs. Because we rebuild Debian constantly, we find lots of problems before they are in testing, before they are in testing. So our actual bug graph is rather this. This is just has 3,000 here. So we have 313, I think, is the number open bugs at the moment. The others are closed. So these are the bugs we are looking at. Maybe there's probably more than 313. 313 is the number of bugs which have a patch. And there are some don't have a patch. So, and for what Frederick did, the rebuild against Debian. This is Bookworm and Build Essential, AMD 64 all. There, 81% of the packages are reproducible, which is not 96, but it's also not so bad. It gets a bit better for the key packages, where it is 84%, or it's worse. Oh, it got a bit better. And for the first one was key packages. And for full Debian, we are at 86.8%. That is quite good, but only 26,000 packages in total are reproducible from what we released. So there's probably 6,000 which are not reproducible yet. And from Build Essential, these are the three packages, source packages, which cannot be reproduced: Linux, GCC, and ISL. I don't know what ISL is, but someone will know. It's the source package, and I didn't look it up. So the fixes should go there, and the fixes there are not easy. Like GCC is unreproducible for years, and Linux, I think we had. I'm not sure what the problem is. But without these, we cannot get Build Essential reproducible, which is kind of the minimum set. We have Essential reproducible, but we install more than Essential. Also, it's AMD 64 because our snapshot mirror is AMD 64 only. And it's only one rebuilder at Frederick's place, and there's no other rebuilders. And it's only one person maintaining this. Thank you very much, Frederick. But I'm also sorry that me or somebody else didn't come up with setting up other rebuilders yet. We do have hardware for this, so if somebody has some time, that we can do more there. And snapshot Debian.org. I already explained this. It's unusable for rebuilds, so we have now this mirror of snapshot where we only mirror AMD 64 and only going back to January 2017, because crawling snapshot Debian.org is really cumbersome. It took 2 months or so to get the 3 years, and going back all 20 years will take longer, and more architectures will also take longer. And because we had this mirror at Frederick's home, we have now another mirror of the mirror hosted at OSL, which has nice bandwidth, and which we now have the CNAME snapshot ReproducibleBuilds.org for now. But we want also definitely ARM64, but basically all architectures Debian has, but that needs more than hardware, because we cannot mirror snapshot that much, because it's so throttled. So that will need more work than just adding hardware. And so Mattia and me made a funding request yesterday for the Frisian funding offer to support a scalable snapshot. In this merge request, there are also the bugs. We filed bugs against snapshot Debian.org, which are blocking and explaining the problem. I have not put the bugs in the slides. Yeah. Then for the next issue is build info. It's actually build info, not build infos Debian.net. And it's, you saw the t-shirt probably. Some of us here have these t-shirts. It's called a commit because my code is a crime. And this is my code. And it's 2 bash scripts, one running in cron on Corsair, pushing stuff to some ReproducibleBuilds host, and the other is Jenkins bash stuff running in Jenkins. And somebody should just really improve this, but it kind of works. Then we had 3,000 missing build info files. I unmuted them, and then 1 or 2 months ago I found 782 more. I fixed these 2, that's easy, and then new ones will keep coming, because if you upload packages you have to build yourself, then it goes through new, and that package will end up in unstable. And if there's not a second upload, then we'll have packages in unstable without build info files for now, but it doesn't hurt, because the release team will block the migration of these packages so they don't end up in testing unstable. So this is the bug what I worked around poorly by this shell script, that the FTP Debian.org doesn't push the build info files anywhere. They are kept on the machine, because the other bug, please include build info files in the archive has been implemented by adding a hook to Duck, where Duck just copies the build info file away. But what Duck normally does with its files, it puts them in a database and then knows this file belongs to this package. And when the package migrates to unstable, then it knows this file also to testing. This file also now is in testing. And for build info files, Duck doesn't know this at all. And that causes some other problems as well. One problem it causes is that build info security updates, that build info file is not available until a point release, because Duck doesn't know it, and there's internal of Duck working. And as a consequence of this, there's no build info files for LTS, because LTS doesn't do point releases. And we kind of want reproducible builds for security updates, so it's unfortunate. And then meaningful reproducibility of Debian is not possible yet, because besides easel, there's also apt is not reproducible. The bugs are fixed, and the package hasn't migrated to testing, but in our test, it's still not reproducible. I haven't checked why, but so. And Debian installer images are not reproducible in Bullseye. Debian live images are not reproducible in Bullseye. But it's possible for AMD 64 only to build DI from Git, as shown by Roland. He will give a talk tomorrow. But we cannot do automated testing of DI images for testing and SID, because DI is so often in an unusable state that these tests will always be read and nobody will look at them. So we know DI is reproducible, what's in Git or SID, but yeah, stuck there. And Debian live images are reproducible using live build, as shown by Roland. Though reproducible package installation is not reproducible packages, you can do a reproducible installation of unreproducible packages. And the worst problem is that the future of the Debian live packages is uncertain. So we have, at the moment, we have three choices: no live images, unreproducible ones, or reproducible ones. But that's about for the people doing the live images to decide. But Roland has shown that it's possible to have reproducible live images now. Roland's talk is tomorrow at 10:40. Reproducible builds as applied to non-compiler output. And Roland and Phil Hens are working on getting these tested for functionality as well. So then we also know they are not reproducible and they work. Kind of good. Yeah, in the release team area, we are very happy that testing migration is now blocking binary uploads. So that's good. We like very much the idea of accelerating migration for reproducibility. We've discussed this a year ago or something, but because of this situation in the last 2 years, this discussion is a bit stalled. And we cannot have packages must be reproducible in Debian policy yet. But maybe for Trixie we can get must not regress. Though that might be difficult with security updates. So must not regress except the security update, or I don't know. Yeah, and another issue which is Salsa CI related, and it's not really by the way, because ReproTest is unmaintained upstream, though we are upstream of ReproTest. Just Shimon wrote ReproTest and then Shimon left the project. So ReproTest is this tool for testing Debian packages locally on your machine, and it's used on Salsa CI, and there they have problems with fake time, and people expect us to fix it, but we are overloaded. So if you are interested in ReproTest, fix it, please. So goals for Bullseye, because we still have 6 or 12 months left, 6 months till the freeze and 12 months more or less till the release. 0 packages without build info files. That's the easy goal. It just needs 700 uploads. Build essential reproducible is harder. These are the three things: Linux, GCC, apt, and ISIL probably. DI image is reproducible. I would love that. Live image is reproducible, I think, is a doable goal. And ARM64 and our snapshot mirror. And a second rebuilder of FTP Debian org. I think are realistic goals to achieve. Whether we make them, I don't know. And for Trixie, yeah, I don't know. I have some long-term goals, but nothing strategic yet. 0 bugs with patches unuploaded. Currently, that 313 bugs will have a patch. If we do 2 NMUs per week, we should be down to 0 by the Trixie release in 3 years. And if we upload to delayed 14, I think I would hope that maintainers who don't like these uploads will cancel them. Yeah, and I would, for Trixie, so in 3 years, I would really like to have snapshot Debian org usable for many users, for all architectures, to enable mass rebuilds. And build info files known and used by Duck would also be nice. And yeah, this is the one bug that apt should warn when installing unreproducible packages. At the moment, it will be way too noisy. Maybe we can have it for Trixie or after Trixie. I don't know. Yes, that was my talk. Thank you for contributing. And if you think reproducible builds should happen, please pick one of these bugs and help fixing these. And these bugs are we have a wiki page, which was the original historic one, and this has still a list of bugs relevant to Debian reproducible builds. They are still best listed on this wiki page. Yeah, I'm confident eventually we'll get there. It will just take some more time. So I guess there's time for questions.
Yes. Any questions?
So the build info files basically mean you're reproducing some package using the build dependencies as they existed at the time it was built. Isn't that kind of making everything worse because you're replacing the source of Bullseye with all uploads that have happened in the entire Debian history? And has anyone tried to reproduce as much as possible of Bullseye or Bookworm using stuff in Bookworm?
No one has tried that.
I think that would make a lot of sense. It will not work out 100%, but maybe if those packages for which it works could be marked as such, that would be an interesting number to know.
Maybe. I'm not convinced it will really work, and it's also not as bad as it sounds, because the build-ins are not updated constantly, so the base system you need to recreate doesn't vary as much as you might think it does. But surely, and we did the design that we only can be sure that if the environment is identically, that you can rebuild this thing. And it might work, of course, as you said, with others, but we cannot know, because this is already complicated and difficult enough, we've not invested.
So yeah. What about picking some GCC version at the time of release and bin-NMUing the archive?
I think the solution rather would be to do a rebuild of the archive before the release. Like at the moment, we cannot really be sure if we can do security updates within stable, because we do the security update within stable, but we tested only the build with what was stable before. So at the moment we release in a kind of unknown state. And if we rebuild everything, that's the release team position, then we also don't know whether really it works. So it's downside, but on the other hand, Ubuntu does rebuilds, Fedora does mass rebuilds before the release, so it works.
I was I was a bit wondering about how the rebuilds could scale. Is there any plans to think about it in an ideal world, once you are fully reproducible, or at least production ready, reproducible? That is not only being proven by Debian itself. Maybe there is some cross proof considered across other projects. Is something like this already in the make?
No, because we're still struggling to have Debian rebuilders. But the idea to have other rebuilders, I've been talking about since 7 years. So I talked about this in 2015 at FOSDEM, have whatever, the NSA and the Russian military rebuild stuff, or whatever, Amnesty International and the CCC, and there are many things.
So when you do these rebuilds, in which order do you them? Because you have the problem that when you have dependencies and you don't have a global overview of your dependency tree, you cannot be sure that on a rebuild you do not fetch a package that is in the meantime uploaded in a newer version. Or can you?
You can. That's what we use by using the snapshot. We use a snapshot variant from that day, from that moment when the package was built originally, so we get the same state.
But there's no global ordering or a global dependency tree.
That's the way Debian works, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Yeah.
I'm mostly repeating the first question about that to verify the reproducibility of a package, you need to check dependencies like the compiler from ancient times, sometimes because there are packages that were uploaded many years ago. But this also makes a practical problem that all the binaries are not guaranteed to run anymore. Like for example, on the x86, the compatibility is still pretty good. We dropped like 286, 486, 586, but there are still some problems. Like for example, some binaries can't work on. Well, there is that SQL stack problem when there is a new CPU, then it has more registers and they don't fit. So the risk is that those old binaries can't run anymore, especially on architectures which don't have such long-standing compatibility. And other than some global rebuilds, do you plan any way to put a cap on that age, that is a floor on the package's date, like you did a mass and then you just to add that built info, but that's something that needs to be done on old packages, not just some subset, and I think that it should be regularly be done. What would you think about ensuring that those dependencies for testing reproducibility should have some maximal age allowed?
I think what you said is that newer hardware models might not produce the same results as older hardware. And
no, I mean that a new processor might require something that can't run old binaries. Another example is like x86. Intel wants to disallow unaligned atomics. So all binaries built with unaligned atomics might stop working.
But anyway, newer hardware breaking old software is out of scope for reproducible builds.
Yeah,
there are other problems with rebuilding old stuff. The main problem we have is that GPG keys expire. So we also try to demand that build info files are signed. But if the signature becomes invalid after 2 years, so we just went to, okay, we don't verify the build info files anymore. Because if we can take the signed sources, the unverified build info file, and get the same results, we are fine anyway. And the next issue with that is that the snapshot also doesn't really have the release files there also expire. So when you download from snapshot, you also download unverified binaries. We still have some problems to solve, and we have food soon, so maybe then we can think more about these problems, but there's many problems we won't solve in the next 5 minutes.
Well, when you have the GPG in Bookworm, it doesn't accept quite a few of packages that are still uploaded now, because they are signed using SHA-1 or LMD 160 signatures. And they are not even verifiable in Bookworm. So that's not to you, but mostly to the FTP team. That I think we should stop accepting those signatures now, and perhaps do source an NMU of all packages that are not verifiable.
I think this is largely unrelated to this topic, so I would like to...
Yes,
Other questions?
Well, I have a question. Is there any user-facing tool where I can check if the package I'm installing is verifiable, reproducible?
Not for Debian.
Okay.
Are there ideas about it for usable tools to check is it package reproducible?
Our idea is that we want all packages to be reproducible, that you can just know that packages are reproducible. Because you don't want to look and see, oh, do I want to use VI or Emacs? VI is reproducible, Emacs not. You will not, and then you need. So just have them all reproducible. And then at the moment we are still even at the base set. So there's this apt bug that apt should warn. There's a hook for apt that apt can warn and say, you're going to install this unreproducible packages. Are you sure you want to do this? But that is a better UI. So we don't want that.
I just wanted to ask, I heard about this project called ReproducibleBuilds. I don't know how it is connected, but has anyone ever tried to bootstrap Debian from nothing?
I don't think Debian, but so the Bootstrap.org project was started at the ReproducibleBuilds Summit in 2017 in Berlin, I think. I'm sure about Berlin. And they produced a compiler, MESS, which is a simple C compiler, which is in Debian, which creates a reproducible binary, and they then can bootstrap that, and they've gotten it down to I think a 400 bytes binary blob, which is still needed to bootstrap MESS or something. But that's down from a lot, and but I'm bootstrapping Debian from scratch. I don't think they have done it. I think they've done it for Geeks, but not for Debian. And Geeks, I don't think has Java or some. There's Geeks is smaller than Debian.
If there aren't any further questions, I'll close this session. Thank you again, Holger, for your talk.
Thank you, Sue.